Good day, everyone. So I'll be taking characteristics of a psychometric test. At the end of this study, you should be able to list and explain the characteristics of psychometric tests such as the objectivity, standardization, uniformity in administration, norm, validity, and then reliability. What is validity? What is reliability? What is the difference between standardization and norm? The characteristics of a good test are the basic elements one should look out for when judging the quality of a psychological test. These qualities include test objectivity, reliability, validity, standardization, and test as a measure of sample behavior. Test objectivity. Objectivity is the degree to which a test result obtained by different scorers are the same without influence of their biases or beliefs on scoring. I'll take it again. Objectivity is the degree to which a test result is obtained by different scorers at the same. Results gotten or results obtained by different scorers are the same without influences of being biased or your belief reflecting on the results. You understand? So objectivity is the degree to which a test result obtained by different scorers are the same without influences of their biases or beliefs on scoring. Most standardized tests of aptitude and achievement tests are high in objectivity. In multiple choice examination, for example, the answers to the questions are fixed, such that marking such could be done by any person or even a machine can score because the results, the answers to the questions are already fixed. It does not actually require the scorer having knowledge of the questions to do the marking. They are already fixed. Online exams or objective exams, if you want to take for example your GNS classes online, the answers are already fixed. So once you do your exam and you click on submit, it is automated. Let me use that word. It is automated. Whoever, or if it is the system or the machine scoring, doesn't have to know the answer. It is automated. So once you are done with the exam, the answer is being marked automatically. So you don't need a scorer, or you don't need the person to have the knowledge of the course or of the class before they are able to score you. So it does not require the scorer having knowledge of the questions to do the marking because the answers are fixed. Hence, such examinations are at times called objective examination. So we go over to standardization. Standardization is another concept in the definition of a psychological test. It simply implies that there is uniformity of procedure in administering or scoring your test. It means there's a standard to which these things are being done. That's just what it simply means. You want to administer, for example, you want to check for emotional intelligence in your workers. The instruments you would be using to test them has to be of that standard to be able to achieve the aim you want to achieve it with. There's a standard. For example, if you want to check for temperature, you either put the thermometer under your armpits, probably in your mouth, or some put it in their anus. That is a standard way of getting the temperature of a human being. I don't know of any other way. So that is what it means to be standardized. It means how the same process, the same procedure is being done across globe, anywhere in the world. If you want to check for temperature, you either put the thermometer under your armpits, in your anus, or in your mouth. So that's the standard of checking for temperature. You understand what I'm saying? So if individuals are to be compared on psychological variable, and such comparison are to be made with reference to scorers on a test measuring the variable, then all other factors should be held constant. except the factor that you are being measured, except the variable we want to measure. Every other variable should be held constant, else your results may not be, of course bias will come in and there may not be as such as you want it to be. So if you know the variable you are testing for, you should be able to hold every other variable, constant, because you don't need them in the test you are checking out for, in what you're about to evaluate. So and there's also this part I also want to talk about, the constancy constancy is also key. Constancy, because it has to be, constancy is maintained in this context when uniformity of testing condition is ensured. The test developer maintains uniformity of procedure by providing detailed directions for administering, scoring, interpreting performance on the test. This is made possible by accompanying any psychological test, with test manual containing detailed direction on administration and scoring of the test, as well as the interpretation of the test scores. So what standardization simply means is there's a standard way administering your test, there's a standard way of scoring your test, there's a standard way of interpreting. So you don't just come up with your own way. For it to be called a psychological test, it has to have this standard. That's what standardization simply means. So uniformity, we go back to uniformity in administration. This is just in furtherance to test standardization. Actually, in order to have a good psychometric test, everything and every process, in administration to test takers, those that you are administering the test to, must be constant. This means that the level of difficulty of the test must be the same for all and everyone taking the test. The environment must be put in consideration where the test is being taken. The temperature, the the humidity must be similar. Everything has to be done in the same uniformed way, in uniformity. You want to test for students in Abraka, you want to test for students in Delsu or Anambra State. You take your students from these two universities and you put them in a classroom to test for their ability on maybe GNS 106. You have to administer the same test to both students of the different universities in the same weather condition, the same temperature, as in everything has to be similar. These are the things that would help us to take away, to cut out bias, to cut out variables that we do not want to test for. Because things can occur that, okay, the reason why Delsu student did better than the students in Anambra is because they had a more conducive environment to write their test, but the other party didn't have enough. So already your results won't be accurate because you didn't test both parties in the same favorable condition, in the same temperature, in the same weather and every other thing. You understand what I'm saying? So every condition must be available to all test takers. It is only when this is achieved that one can say the performance of the test takers was as a result of their ability alone and not the test or the difference in testing environment. So now we go over to norm. The establishment of test norms is another important step in standardization of a psychometric test. For a psychometric test to be valid, to be called a psychological test, it has to have a norm. A norm is a specified standard. Is a specified standard for judging or interpreting a test or interpreting a test taker's performance. For example, if you say, you hear people say that's how it is done, that's the standard, that's the norm. Or for example, you want to write a proposal to top organizations, they will tell you that this is the standard at which we take our proposals, or this is the standard. For example, an organization wants to employ graduates, they will tell you they only take students who have first class, probably, or their limit is between first class and second class upper. That's a 2-1. That's a standard they've already placed. So if a student with 2-2 applies, automatically erases their own application, because by the time they filter through, they would only filter out those that do not meet the standard they are trying to, they want to take. So as an organization that has that standard and a third class applicant applies, it filters it out, because this one is not what we want. You understand what I'm saying? So a norm is a specified standard for judging or interpreting a test or a test taker's performance in the psychometric test. Test norms serve as a frame of reference on the basis of which test results can also be evaluated. Psychometric tests have no predetermined standard anyway of passing or of failing, but psychometric tests can be interpreted by scoring it with scores obtained by other people, other test takers on the same test. I can also give an example of maybe you students write exams on GNS 106, but before you wrote the exam, International Psychometric Center has not yet probably set the standard for the pass mark. Maybe because they cannot tell yet what the abilities of the students are at the moment. So what they do is, when they get the results after the exam and they see that, okay, most people scored above 70, few people rather scored above 70, but more people scored between 70 and 60 and the 50s and the likes. So IPC, International Psychometric Center, or the school can then say, okay, the standard we would use in scoring this particular set or in scoring this particular school will be 70 and above, instead of doing 100 and above. You understand what I'm saying? So they'll do 70 and above. You just come up with a standard and say that's what we'll be using. That's the basis. That's the pass mark to score the student. So psychometric tests, psychometric tests may be expressed as the number of correct items, time required to complete a task. You can say we want you people to run from this point to this point in 10 seconds. But the first person to do it did it in 6 seconds, or probably in 5 seconds. So a new standard can then be created to say, okay, the next, maybe if you want to take it again, this has to be achieved in 5 seconds. So you've set a standard for that race. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. An individual score, on a test is referred to as a raw score. A raw score is meaningless until it is evaluated using the test norm as the baseline score. The norm of a psychometric test is established from, it's established from the raw scores of a group of test takers, which refer to a standardization sample. Like, I don't know if you've been taught this, but in if you want to take a test from the numerous numbers of students, you take a sample out of those you'll be using to test whatever it is you want to test. So a standardization sample is a large representative sample of a type of persons from whom the test is designed. We want to test Delsu students or Abraca states, polytechnic. We can't take everyone. So from the over 10,000 students, we can decide in IPC to take maybe 100. So the 100 we are taking out of the 10,000 is the standardization sample. These ones are the sample we are taking, pulling out of the population. So, however, using the same test, different norms may be established by different for different population. Things changes. If you are doing this particular population, probably you have some schools that are less than 100. You cannot say that the sample has to be 100. So you have to change your standard again based on the different different norms being established by different reasons, for different populations as your test is being taken. For instance, a common test may be, administered for admission into school, but different cutoff scores may be set, for different classes. For those that are going to take medical courses, their cutoff may be 70. For those that are going to take probably engineering, their cutoff may be 60. But for those that want to take something like business administration, their cutoff may be 30, maybe 40. So it depends on the course the person is going for. That's why I said there's really no I don't use the word standard. There's no limit to you setting your standard. It depends on the person taking the test or what you determine to to make the standard of testing for results among your students and all. So we move over to reliability. Reliability is a measure of the test consistency. Reliability is just how reliable. For something to be reliable, for you to call something reliable, it means over time it has been consistent. So reliability is a measure of the test consistency. It's a useful test in consistency. You've used it over and over and over again and it has not failed you. So you can now say this test is reliable just because it is consistent. Consistency is actually key in achieving this. As an analogy, think of a studiometer used to measure height. Studiometer is used to measure height. If it gives you a particular measure for the first time, you are being measured, and a different measure when you step on a moment later, it means it's not reliable because your height is your height. If I want to check for my height, I think I'm a 5 feet 9 inches. I know my height. I am a 5 feet 9 inches. If I use if I use a stadiometer, it should give me a 5 feet 9 inches result. If I check it for the first time and it does give me 5 inches, I'm a 5 feet 9 inches, and then I step into it again and then it gives me a different result, it means there's a problem. It's not valid, it's not reliable. So that's not, you can't use it to test for anything. Similarly, if an IQ test yield a score of 90 for an individual today and 135 the following week, it's not reliable. It's not consistent. The result is not consistent. And reliability is one important tool to look out for in your psychological test. It is key. It is of topmost importance for you to say this can be categorized as a psychological test. It has to be reliable, not to a large extent, to a complete extent. It has to be consistently being reliable. It cannot fail. You cannot get one result today and get a different result tomorrow. It's not possible. So that's one important thing we have to look out for in in saying this psychological test is good for use because it is reliable. Reliability also can be measured reliability also can be a measure of test of a test internal consistency. All of the items like the questions on your probably a questionnaire and every other thing on a test should be measuring the same thing. From a statistical standpoint, the items should correlate with each other. Good tests have reliability coefficient which ranges from as low as 65 to 0.65 to 0.90. The theoretical maximum is 1. So we move over to validity. Validity is a measure of tests, or how do I put it? Validity is how useful a test is. I'm trying to put this in simple English for you to understand properly. It just simply means it is valid.